my history has a better chance of running me, which doesn't turn out well.
That's a good phrase. I like that phrase. Your history has a good way of running you. That's powerful.
Right.
Good morning, Alistair Moes.
Good morning, Suzanne.
You're close to me on the North Shore here, as we are on a screen, though.
Yes.
A few kilometers away from each other.
Yeah.
Alistair, I want to talk to you today about anger. I have a lot of
Good.
questions for you. So you are a counselor with anger management, and am I describing that the best way?
Yes. And I've run Moose Anger Management for 30 years. There's a whole team of us.
So you're the
And
anger guy.
I'm the anger man. That's me.
Can you tell me in 1 minute or less about you?
Well, been doing this for 30 years and I like to practice what I preach. So I was out running in the trails yesterday for an hour and I'm put a lot of effort into personal growth because I think that's necessary, perhaps more at this point in time in history than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
And also because I love it and I come from a pretty crazy family background. So it's necessary as well.
How'd you get into anger management as a practice?
I was started up a youth detox for street kids many years, the early 90s with Family Services of Greater Vancouver. And I got laid off. Well, I chose to be laid off. And during that layoff, I spoke with Jean Fike, who used to run Burnaby Family Life Institute. And we were just yakking away. And she said, why don't you come and do an anger management group for us? And I was on the phone and with absolute confidence, I said, yes, I'll do that. That'd be great. And then I hung up the phone. I'm like, I don't know how to do that. But apparently I did know how to do that. And the more I did that, the more I realized that my role models, parents didn't really have anger management down very well. So I had a lot to learn personally, but I was up for that. I was interested and I've been learning more ever since.
So you have personal history then with it?
Yes,
So
there
that
was
connected you.
anger in my family of origin. Yes.
What did that do to you, having anger in your upbringing?
Well, when there's anger there, there's usually all sorts of other things. There's usually a history of trauma, which I wasn't really aware of course, not growing up anyway.
Right.
And so I learned at a really deep cellular level what the impact of shit hitting the fan and then nobody talks about it. Terrible things might happen and then just nobody ever talks about it, right? Like to the extent of when I was 18, my mom suddenly died, had an aneurysm, and then my dad just didn't talk about it, didn't have a funeral, nothing, which is pretty extreme. And so I learned and so many men don't grow up learning to talk about difficult topics.
Yeah.
And so I'm sort of the, black sheep or the outsider in the family who goes in the other direction and creates a whole career talking about the things that we never talk about. And that seems to help men.
You and I were saying before, it's a growing trend. We're seeing this more and more, and we need it so badly.
Yes, it is badly needed. And, we start a group tomorrow night. There's 15 guys. It's online. And at the end of tomorrow night, at least one guy will say, because we do a little checkout, just say one or two words at the end of the session. One or two guys will say, they'll look around, they'll see it's just a bunch of regular guys, for the most part. And they'll say, it's good to know that I'm not alone or that I'm not the only one. And it's like at the beginning of the 2 hours, there's all this tension and anxiety. And at the end, guys are relaxed. They're happy. They're inspired. They're just glad that they showed up. And that feels good.
It feels like it's so liberating when you have people that have been holding things in for so long. And now they're not only able to share it, they're sharing it with people that get it.
Yeah. They're they feel much more seen and heard
Mm.
and valued, and many of them haven't had any conversations with anybody about this stuff, and often they're hurting.
So I asked you initially, what did the anger in your upbringing do to you back then? I want to know what's the residual effect now as an adult.
So one of the things that happened for me was I I learned when I was very young that it wasn't safe for me to show anger
Right.
because it was way too scary. My mom showed anger and my dad never showed anything. My mom showed a lot of anger, and when, you're little and your mom shows a lot of anger, it starts breaking things or doing
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
which didn't happen all the time, but they're memorable moments. So I didn't learn how to be angry. And
Mm.
so growing up, I would either pretend like everything's fine when it's not, or if the anger bubbled up enough, it'd come out of me like to the extreme. Whereas anger can be a healthy force for good, like we need anger, or we can do something really unhealthy or, kind of toxic with
Yeah.
the anger.
I want to explore anger with you before we talk about dealing with it, because I really find it an interesting emotion. Like, I was just telling somebody last week, I actually think it's the worst emotion. It's the one that it keeps me up at night, right? It's the most discombobulating. Can you define for me what you would say anger is?
So anger is the guardian of our boundaries.
Oh,
So if somebody crosses our boundaries, mistreats us or somebody we care about or something we care about,
hmm,
we feel it. It's very physical in the body and it rises up like energy or heat, and it's mobilizing us like it's a big
mm,
statement. If we pick up the message that the anger is giving to us, it energizes us to move, to act, to do something. It's letting us know that something's wrong. Now, if we pause for a minute and I tell the guys, okay, the first thing you do when you feel the anger, shut your mouth
right, right.
and breathe deep through your nose into the abdomen. If you can, take, 4, 5, 6 slow breaths, like in for 6, out for 6. And then this gives us a chance so that we can, you know, get the body to relax enough so that we can be intelligent and heart connected with the anger and choose what to do with it. Whereas the reason people, men, women, what have you, call us is because they didn't. Usually when people call us, they haven't been sleeping well, they haven't been eating well, they've been smoking or drinking too much, they've been under a huge amount of stress, somebody's died within the last year, what have you, and just the planets aligned a certain way and they lost it. But
Mm,
they lost it, they were reactive. So if we aren't careful with the fire in anger, then we can lay misery and burn everything to the ground.
hmm.
Whereas if we're wise with the anger, Gandhi probably kind of pissed off at the British occupying India,
Sure.
did something
Totally.
nonviolent
Yeah.
and super powerful. So it can help us to address something difficult with our partner, our parents, our kids, our boss, or whoever. It can move us to have those difficult conversations because we realize I can't sit with this. It's keeping me up at night.
Yeah.
There's something I need to do to address this conflict. And once I do address the conflict, it's like, huh, hopefully,
Sure.
if we
Totally.
do a good job.
We go back a bit to what it does to you? Like, I'm curious to know what you can tell me about what does anger do at a physiological level? I think we all know emotionally it sucks. It keeps me up at night. What does it do physiologically in the body?
So it depends. If we let it move us too much, when we react, then our heart rate goes up and our blood pressure goes up. And if we
Yeah.
go over about 147 beats a minute, our eye-hand coordination starts to deteriorate. If we go past that, typically the adrenaline kicks in, the cortisol, all these other hormones are released. Hundreds of other chemical changes take place in the gut and other parts of the body and our brain, and literally the the blood vessels leading to the higher reasoning part of the brain constrict
Hmm.
because the body doesn't know the difference between a physical threat or an emotional threat. It just experiences threat. And so if we feel stressed enough, then we shut down the higher reasoning part of the brain and we're left with an ancient part of the brain that's just all or nothing, fight or flight, life or death. And so then everything that we think is super dramatic, all or nothing. It's like we feel like and we think like it's the end of the world when afterwards it's like, what was I thinking, right? Because it wasn't the end of the world. I wasn't actually going to die, but your body doesn't know that if we escalate enough. And then we overreact like crazy if we let ourselves escalate. So we go into lots of stuff around physiology and help people understand and tune into what happens in the body so that,
Mm-hmm.
the homework between session 1 and 2 in the group is just notice that constriction in your chest or the heat rising
Yeah.
up or the flushed face or the red ears or however it shows up in your gut in your solar plexus and notice it in other people without judgment, just with curiosity. We're just studying this. And most guys, the vast majority of guys come back to session number 2 and say, well, things are better because they were noticing, because they were paying attention. That paying attention is what we need if we're going to be intentional rather than just reacting and the more we react, the more we escalate, the more our emotional maturity level drops. Right to the point where we think, yeah, if I yell right now, that's going to help, right? It's like,
Right.
okay, or at 2 years old, it makes sense to have a temper tantrum.
When I was younger, like a teenager, particularly probably 14, right? Which is kind of the key. Like that's that pressure cooker of life is 14 years old, especially
Yep.
I think for females. I remember having so much anger, and it would be not it would be over stupid things like I couldn't understand something on my homework. It was nothing like really major. And I remember being out of control. I remember raging and I just couldn't process it. I never was violent, but I remember, throwing a pen maybe a bit against the wall or into my pillow. And that feels now that I know more about neurology, like my brain was hijacked. Is that a fair way to say that?
Well, it's fair, especially at, 12, 13, 14, because there's so many changes happening in the brain that literally sometimes we short circuit. And if we escalate too much, then it's just ego. Then it's just fight or flight, right? It's just
Mm-hmm.
all or nothing. I have to get my way, or it's the end of the world, where clearly we've all been in that place. And yeah, then we act like, big babies.
Absolutely. And I'd like to think as we get older, we learn how to manage it more, but not necessarily, right? I mean, otherwise you'd be out of business.
Well, yeah, that would be good. Well, and also I work with a lot of older men, like at least in their 50s or 60s. And I'm 63. So I know what this is like because I think a lot of older guys don't look after themselves, keep on sort of mistreating their body as if it doesn't need any maintenance. And then they get full of all these aches and pains, and then they act like grumpy old men.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I try to make sure I do lots of stretching and exercise and meditation so that I don't turn into any
Right.
more of a grumpy
Yeah.
old man than I already am.
I am curious to know of what you thought of what I said earlier, where I think it's the worst emotion, anger. What do you think of that statement of like, where is it on the spectrum of emotions for you in terms of manageable, sucks,
I
not a
think
bad
the most
emotion?
I think the most uncomfortable emotion is shame.
Okay. Well,
And every emotion we can do something healthy
mm,
or something
mm,
unhealthy. And so shame is the guardian of our integrity.
mhm.
Shame, if we do something
Yeah,
healthy
that's
with
good.
it, after we've said something mean to our mother or father or somebody we love, we feel it usually in the solar plexus,
Okay.
right? Which is where we feel power and powerlessness. And shame leaves us like just beating ourselves up if we
Mhm.
do something unhealthy with it, and if there's a significant trauma history in your life, like that goes back on both directions, and from what I where I grew up or in my family of origin, and the shame keeps us spinning our wheels. The shame will leave us just completely stuck. And often when anger shows up, behind it is shame.
Mhm.
Because when
Okay.
we're run by that toxic shame, then we keep it a secret and we beat ourselves up and we judge and criticize everybody else along with ourselves, and we compare ourselves a lot and all sorts of other things.
Mhm.
Whereas healthy shame is we just say out loud what we did and
Right.
apologize
Right.
and repair and do something intelligent with it.
Yeah.
So I think shame is a real key emotion that most people avoid even talking about because they don't know what to do with it. But anger, I think, often arises out of like not doing what you need to do to maintain healthy boundaries. Then we feel like a failure, or so many men feel like a failure because they don't make enough money, and they're it's hard to do that these days, it seems.
I like what you said about like shame and healthy shame and linked with integrity. I've never heard that before. And while you're talking, I'm just thinking, almost feel like healthy shame. Like I did this, I fess up, I'm sorry. It is linked with our integrity, right? Healthy shame is that's our integrity. Because if I didn't care, I wouldn't confess what I did. I wonder if it builds our integrity and brings about more self-worth because of the decision that we've made in that moment of the healthy shame.
The healthy shame connects us with our higher self,
Right.
our
Yeah.
the adult, our wisdom, our heart, and our intelligence, because we can see in a bigger picture. Well, we can think longer
Yeah.
term.
Yeah.
Whereas when the toxic shame is running us, it's like we just have to win right this moment, or it's the
Yeah.
end of the
Yeah.
world. We
Totally.
have to get away right now. And it's just really, there's this immature hurt little kid running us. And so we act in a way
Yeah.
that's childish. And so the more we practice with humility and gratitude and compassion, then the adult higher self part of us actually has an opportunity to
Hmm.
practice being in charge of our life. So we tend to operate more like
Yeah.
an adult.
I've not considered the idea of like healthy shame and detrimental shame, like negative shame. And I think you're right. Shame to a healthy level, it's good. If I do something, if I steal from my mother, I want to fess up. Like, there's a power, like there's a power in shame. And I actually, it's taking me to the next question that you alluded to is the power of anger, because you mentioned earlier benefits of anger, right?
Yeah,
So we're shifting.
if
Yeah, tell me about what are the benefits of anger? How does it help us in life? Because it's not possible to live anger free anyway.
we need anger. If somebody comes to me and says, "Well, I never get angry," I'll respond, "I'm sorry."
Right? Yeah.
That's too
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, for multiple reasons. One is people are probably walking all over you. And if
Sure.
you repress anger, it has this debilitating impact on our immune system, right? And so women are more likely to repress their anger than men.
Hmm.
And so there's a lot of autoimmune kind of problems and
Right.
really like hard to understand things like fibromyalgia and all these types of things. Usually you look behind that and somebody's repressing their anger. They're not, they don't feel safe enough. And so if you don't feel safe enough when you're little because it was felt really dangerous, then it doesn't matter how intelligent or capable you are as an adult. You can run like $100 million company, and at home in your relationship, you still don't speak up because it just grabs you,
Hmm.
that trauma from being a kid, and stops you. And so when people can heal that, it's like they become able to express their anger, but in a healthy way. We absolutely need that. And healthy anger helps us speak up. It helps us speak the truth,
Hmm.
not in a cruel or demeaning way, but we can feel anger and have compassion. We can feel anger toward our kid and still feel love. And
Yeah,
so
right.
not let
Right.
the anger run us over so that
Yeah.
we end up insulting our kid or shaming our kid.
Yeah.
We end up acknowledging and being vulnerable and open with the anger. Then it can deepen a connection with somebody.
You mentioned Gandhi before, right? Like
Yes.
the
Yeah.
thing I love about anger is it can really elicit positive action. It can help make this world a better place because I'm moved to act.
Yeah, it's a motivational energy.
Yeah.
It's just we need to be very careful with that, right? Anger can burn or anger can illuminate,
Great.
right? It
Yeah.
can shine a light and we can see what's going on in our life more
Hmm.
clearly, but we have to take the time to do that. We need to pause, and that's the adult part of us where we practice some patience, we breathe, we meditate, we consult with wise people who can help us get more clarity, um, which tends to work a
Hmm.
lot better than reacting.
Okay, let's shift to now dealing with anger. So I'm curious to know, I mean, you've already alluded to a lot of things. Walking through with people that don't want to have anger that's ruining their lives or being so invasive. So how talk to me about how you walk a client in the process of mitigating the anger that is the reason that they're with you.
So one of the things I love about being in a group is when one person will say, they'll be responding to a question and they'll say, well, I really got angry at my wife or my son or my dad or whoever, and I could feel it build up, and I shut my mouth and I took that breath and I pulled back and maybe I left the situation and said, "Look, I'll come back and talk to you about this later." And I'll say, "Now that's power, right?" A lot of us men grow up learning power is power over people, but we don't have control over them. We don't even have control over ourselves all the time. So this ability to pull back is super powerful because it means we're not letting that reactive part take us over and
Mhm.
burn everything to the ground. We're able to step back and connect with our heart and our head and the intelligence, the wisdom that's in our body. And then we can respond more wisely, or we're more likely to respond more wisely. It's recognizing that when we get triggered, especially if we're sleep deprived and hungry and all these other stress things, that we're we're elevated. We can notice when we're on the edge and go, "Wow, I need to be really careful because I don't want to lose it." So it brings more awareness when we're connected with that. What are the physical sensations that happen in your body when you're angry, when you're on the edge? The more aware we are of those things, then we can notice, wow, I'm grinding my teeth. Or often people, they'll hold their breath just briefly in between breaths, and they're holding all this tension, and their breath is really shallow. And in that moment, what happens in your body is you're not getting enough oxygen around your
Okay.
body. And so the heart automatically starts to pump faster and harder if we're breathing in that shallow manner, which just escalates us, right? It's completely counterproductive. So that's why shut your mouth, breathe through the nose. And when we breathe through the nose, the sinuses condition the air that we inhale so that the lungs can pull up to 20% more oxygen out
Mm.
of it. So that's why you shut your mouth, you breathe deep and slow, and that triggers the relaxation response in the body. Then you can reconnect with your true self.
Right. So
And
it's
we want,
recognizing.
yeah, well, and all of this is about connecting to your own core values, what really matters to you. Because if we allow the anger to escalate us too much, then we just run from our history. Like
Hmm.
we're not present enough to be in charge of ourselves right now, and then we feel bad afterwards because we didn't act in a way that's in alignment with who we really are. And so I
Hmm.
don't tell people what to do. It's like figure out your core values and what you really want to do and how you want to interact with people and become more like that. But to do that, you need to stop and breathe.
So I have to recognize that it's either welling up. I think it's easy to recognize it as soon as it happens, but sometimes I know with those experiences, it's just growing and growing and growing.
Well,
So
and
if you
so a
feel the
lot of people will say, I go from 0 to 100 like that.
in a sec, yeah,
And my thing is, well, I believe that you actually had a whole bunch of stuff happening before that. And so
sure.
I did a bunch of somatic experiencing training.
Can you explain somatic?
So somatic means that that it's just what's in the body. We're animals. We want our body wants to heal from trauma and from other things. And our job is to sort of get out of the way so that the body can actually heal. And our body wants to heal, but we need to be connected with it. So the somatic work around this is being really tuned into the different sensations in your body.
Mhm.
So some people will notice that they're escalating. They'll notice that they're hold their hands in fists, and or their legs will start shaking, or they'll feel something uncomfortable in their gut, or the classic constriction in the chest is usually connected with fear, where in the gut, it's usually around worry and anxiety. In the shoulders or lower back, it's about like taking on too much responsibility. Usually in the throat, not always, people have discomfort in their throat. It's because they're not being heard or they don't feel like they have a voice. And when we feel unheard, ignored, most people have a really strong reaction because then it's like you speak and your words just disappear. So it's like you don't exist. In existential psychology, they call it annihilation, right? It's like you're destroyed utterly and completely if you have no voice in the world. And surprisingly, that shows up. And literally, I've had clients who have had to have surgery on their throat
Really?
after being in a relationship long term where their words were dismissed, ignored, or twisted and distorted, like gaslighting kind of stuff. So it has all this impact. And a lot of men, like myself, as a boy growing up, my dad thought the emotions were irrelevant. Like, well,
Mhm.
why be sad?
Mhm.
You don't need to be sad.
Mhm.
And my mom died, as mentioned, and then his second wife died, and his third partner died. And I never saw him shed a tear.
Really?
It's like, ooh, that's not good. But one day, about 20 years after my mom died, she was a nurse at VGH on the burn ward. He phoned me up and he says, I donate some money to the burn ward every year. And this time I was talking to them on the phone. This was in the 90s. And he said, I couldn't get off the phone fast enough. I just burst into tears. So it was like he was holding on to that grief for 20 years.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden something triggered it, and some of it was released. But it's released unconsciously, reactively. And grief is sacred. Like we should be thankful that we grieve. It means we loved somebody deeply,
Right.
right? And it's like it sits in our body until it has a chance to move. And that doesn't mean it disappears. We don't feel it anymore. It means you've done something healthy and healing with it. So
Mhm.
you don't have to just push it down with cigarettes and alcohol and what have you.
Can we move? I want to take what you just said there of what happens when you overcome grief. I want to know what you have seen then in terms of transformation for the people that you have worked with to overcome anger. Like what happens in their body, in their mind, in their spirit when they do the work with you and the anger
Yep.
is, they're managing it.
When they're responsible with it and it moves them to act and to deal with things and to speak honestly, then afterwards, like almost without exception, they'll say, "Yeah, I feel lighter, like some weight's been lifted
Mm.
off me." They're
Mhm.
breathing easier. And sometimes in the group, I love it because somebody will, show up on session number 1, and then by session number 5, somebody else in the group will say, wow, you look so much happier right now.
Mm,
Like they're, that they'll look younger, they'll look more vibrant and alive. They're not holding all this
right.
anymore. And so the body gets literally physically healthier,
Mm-hmm.
and often we can think more clearly. And when we bring down the stress level, our memory works better. If you escalate high enough, the memory will get choppy, or people will even blank out even without alcohol. They'll have like a blackout where they don't remember
Mm,
what they said or
really?
did. And so like everything works better. So of course people are happier because they're more themselves. And that's a beautiful thing to see.
It feels like it that when you're able to learn how to manage anger, it gives you the freedom to be who you are meant to be. Everything's lifted and you can now be you.
Well, and then the focus becomes on how you act in the world, how you respond,
Sure.
rather than being attached to a specific outcome. Like this has to happen or it's the end of the world. It's like, no. It's like when the adult is in charge, it's like, well, if it doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I will survive regardless of what happens. Yes, if it doesn't work out this way in my relationship, it'll be super painful. But I will get through that, and I'll still have my dignity.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Whereas when people come to me, typically they've been overly attached to an outcome, often to how somebody else acts. And then you're kind of out of control of that because that's
Mm-hmm.
not really within your power.
Okay, Alistair, I always end with 3 wrap-up questions.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna wrap up about anger, and I feel that these really maybe get to the heart of it. Here's my first question: where is the balance of that normal anger that is we all experience anger to anger that is problematic? So at what point then, for example, do do your clients go, oh shoot, this is not appropriate and not healthy that they go for help? What's that tipping
So
point?
so the tipping point is when you scare other people,
Okay, makes sense.
right? It's
Yeah.
when you express your anger and other people are kind of horrified or scared, young or old, or feel deeply hurt, then yeah, you've crossed a line.
Okay, here's my second question. My guess is you've got some people that just don't do the work. You've got some people that it's money,
Sure.
it's time, it's effort. What would you say to them? Like, what's that justification of doing the hard work? And let's be honest, like probably paying some money for therapy to work through anger and to get to the point that we are managing it.
If you want to stay in your comfort zone your whole life then shrinks. If you want to learn and grow, you need to step into your discomfort. You need to try something different. You keep on doing the same thing, you're just spinning your wheels. I'm okay if you don't do the work, but
Mhm.
you probably won't be, and the people around you probably won't be, but
Yeah,
I'm not here to convince them.
I would think that if anything, if you've gotten to the point where your anger is affecting others, you've scared people, like you said, you're now maybe out of the equation because you've got other people involved in your life. Like that's why you do the work, is that you've got others that are being affected detrimentally.
Yeah, or you've lost another job, or you just
Right. Sure.
quit a job without giving notice or what have you. Or sometimes it's the person doesn't know how to speak up, right? They're just
Yeah.
swallowing all their anger.
Yeah.
And that also harms relationships because you can't have a healthy relationship if you don't express anger.
Yeah.
It just needs to be expressed with some love and compassion. But anger is about our hurt, our pain, and people need to know that we're angry if we're angry. Otherwise, you can't have a healthy relationship.
Yeah. I think it's so fair to be able to talk about that. It feels so healthy to have the dialogues about it, right? If anger is a natural human emotion, it's just to what level are we doing it? That I've had talks like this with my children about just anger and what they perceive and what I perceive about it.
Me too.
Yeah,
I
right?
mean,
All
not with your
parents.
children, with my children.
But all of us parents, like I think for parenting, anger is a huge element of, I've talked to so many friends that I lost my cool. I couldn't stop yelling and it's everywhere.
Yes, it is everywhere, and we can get better with it if we want to pluck up the courage to go and address it.
Here's wrap-up question number 3. I'm actually changing my question because I see behind you, you've got a book called Lose Your Temper. And I see your
And,
name there. Is that
and
Alistair Moes on there? So in 1 minute, last question, 1 minute or less, can you give me a synopsis of the book that you've written?
I go into all the physiology around
Okay.
what happens when we escalate and our quality of judgment goes down here. And when people read this, people will say things to me, have said many, many times, I didn't see you in my family when I was growing up. I go, oh, I was there. Because many times people think I wrote this specifically to them because they
Yeah.
can relate so much to it. So
Totally.
there's a lot of personal stories from myself, but also from clients who've given me permission to share their stories. And so it's real, it's lived experience. It isn't just theory.
Hmm. Can you give me the best story of one of your clients?
Well, one of my clients grew up in Australia, and she attended our women's groups when I was still co-facilitating the women's groups many years ago. And she grew up in a very negativity-filled family. Moved to Vancouver. 10 years later, she comes to anger management. She's like, Vancouver is such an unfriendly city. The goal, and we have everybody come up with a goal. The goal that she came up with was that she was going to say, every time she had a negative thought towards somebody or something, she was going to say, love and light to you. Sort of like she was blessing everybody. And she practiced that for a number of weeks. And then she came in and she's, actually, people are pretty friendly in Vancouver.
Interesting.
Because she carried herself differently. The
Right.
look on her face was much more open and inviting. And she would come and see me individually once in a while, and I'd say, "Oh, so some more people actually, somebody else use your goal." She's like, "Oh yeah, I should start doing that again." Right? Because the easy thing is not to pay attention, to let this stuff slide.
Yeah.
And that's why I meditate every day, and I make sure that I'm practicing things on a daily basis. Otherwise, my history has a better chance of running me, which doesn't turn out well.
That's a good phrase. I like that phrase. Your history has a good way of running you. That's powerful.
Right.
That's good.
Yeah.
Alistair Moes, thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you? What's your website?
Angerman.online. You can also look up Moose or at Moose Anger Management on almost every social media platform. We have a YouTube channel. We're on Instagram, TikTok, and all sorts of other stuff.
Alistair, thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure.
Thanks for listening. Now, you can subscribe to this channel if you want to get more content about learning how we find authentic connections, and click like on that little link below. But more, share this with somebody who needs to build more of their own wellness and foster relationships with other people. I'll see you next time.